It's termite season.
Hi, it's me.
And bugs fear the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. Go blue at Essential Pest Control. We'll eliminate those bugs, bees, and termites. And stop paying too much to that national provider. Buy local for great service and affordable rates. Call Essential Pest Control because termites fear the blue.
Run for your life.
Call for the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. 886-3029. That's 886-3029. Or check online at essentialpest.com.
This is Ed Wilkinson with Wilkinson Wealth Management, where we manage money for gun owners. What does it mean to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired? It means designing a plan that allows you to do the things you want to do, outpace inflation, and never run out of money in your lifetime. If you want to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired, call me, Ed Wilkinson, at 777-1911. That's 777-1911 or WilkinsonWealthMGMT.com.
I'm proud to welcome my good friends at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail to Inside Track as an advertiser. Jamie Kipper and her staff are conservation experts. They sell round and square steel tubing, metal plate and roofing materials, as well as new and used steel, aluminum, and stainless steel to ranchers, artists, interior designers, roofers, as well as you do-it-yourselfers out there. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail is open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to noon. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, 701 East 36th Street. Call 520-209-1576. That's 520-209-1576. Or go to TucsonIronRetail.com. Come by and be sure to ask for Jamie. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail. This is what conservation and repurposing is all about.
Welcome to Inside Track with Bruce Ash and Ed Wilkinson on the Live the Dream Media Network.
Hello, everybody, and a very pleasant good morning to you, wherever you may be. Bruce Ash and Ed Wilkinson coming to you live and in color from the Ultra Luxe Essential Pest Control Studios here in the hub of the Live the Dream Media Megalopolis in Marana, Arizona. Thanks for joining us today. We have another action-packed show on Big Wednesday. Joining us in just a few moments is Dr. Rafael Medoff. The topic is the globalization of the Intifada, the history of anti-Semitism in the U.S. Department of State and the FDR White House, as well as the upcoming New York City mayoral election, which features as its leading candidate a Stalinist anti-Semite who very well could become New York's next mayor. In the second half of today's show, we'll catch up on the great big aesthetically pleasing bill and lots of other news. Eb and I. Eb?
Hey, Bruce and I hope you're going to support our sponsors who help us pay the man here at Live the Dream Media, my company, Wilkinson Wealth Management, our friend Eric Rudin at Essential Pest, Jamie Kipper at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail, and Bruce's three-generation company, Paul Ash Commercial Real Estate. When you call on them, please let them know you found out about them from Eb and Bruce on Inside Track. And Bruce, by the way,
Yes.
I came into the office on Sunday
Yep.
because I had to get work done.
Yep.
And I found termites. So my call went to Eric Rudin,
Yeah.
who answered the phone,
Which is nice.
And he said, "Oh, I'll have a guy out there tomorrow."
And he probably was, wasn't he?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Eric is doing a great job. Take it from me. Call them. They are wonderful.
They are. I agree. To talk with us or our guest, call 520-771-5101 or send a message to us on the Live the Dream Media Facebook page. Our special guest this morning is a man I followed for some time. Dr. Rafael Medoff is a founding member of the David S. Wyman Institute for Holocaust Studies and the author of more than 20 books about Jewish history and the Holocaust. Look for his upcoming book, The Road to October 7th, Hamas, the Holocaust, and the Eternal War Against Jews. Welcome, Rafael. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
I'm so pleased. I've followed you now for a long time. We tried to get you on the Saturday show, but that doesn't work out if you're Shomer Shabbos, and I very much respect that. And I don't want to make this like the Jewish hour exactly, but I had the honor at our synagogue on Saturday morning giving the sermon. both on the 4th of July, our Declaration of Independence, and its connection toward Jewish values. It was quite an opportunity. I really enjoyed it. So we've corresponded for the last couple of years. I featured you and many of your opinion pieces online, and you're a brave leader fighting anti-Semitism all through the world today. We appreciate you joining with us, and please talk to us about. I'm going to get this out there right away because it's an important thing. Talk to us about the work of the Wyman Institute for Holocaust Studies.
The late Professor David S. Wyman was the author of the definitive study of the Roosevelt administration's response to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
His book, The Abandonment of the Jews, published in 1984, was a New York Times bestseller, and to this day remains the gold standard in the field. He revealed in greater detail than any scholar before him that President Roosevelt had numerous opportunities to help rescue Jews during the Holocaust and yet deliberately turned away. Professor Wyman's work has been carried on by my institute, the David Wyman Institute for Holocaust Studies, which engages in historical research, publications, and public programs exploring additional aspects of how America responded to the Holocaust, such as the American media's coverage of news of the Nazi genocide, how various American institutions, universities, and religious institutions responded to Nazism and the Holocaust, and related topics.
So, how long have you been with the Institute?
I was the founder of the Institute, along with my colleagues, more than 20 years ago. We were based in Washington, D.C., and we continue to regularly research and publish new material having to do with American responses to the Holocaust. Professor Wyman's book, although it is the definitive work in the field, was not the last word in the field. So younger scholars like myself took up that mantle years ago, and we continue to focus on that, mainly for the overriding reason of wanting to learn lessons from that period. What mistakes were made by our government leaders, our news media, and others that we can avoid in the future so that America does not again abandon the Jews or any other persecuted minorities when it is in a position to help.
If somebody wanted to donate to the Institute, how might they do that?
Our website is wymaninstitute.org, W-Y-M-A-N institute.org, and we are a 501c3 tax-deductible educational institution.
That's great. So I mentioned your new book coming out in just a couple of months. Talk about it and give our viewers some information once you've talked about the book, when they might be able to find it, where it might be sold, and so on.
The book is called The Road to October 7. And I guess the subtitle really tells you what you need to know. Hamas, the Holocaust, and the Eternal War Against the Jews. What I show in this book is that what happened on October 7th, the Hamas massacres, torture, and mass rape of innocent Israelis, was in fact not an aberration, but was consistent with centuries of anti-Semitic violence, not only by Palestinian Arabs, which alone goes back for more than a century, but in fact that October 7 has important parallels to anti-Semitic violence from previous generations. I start in the Middle Ages with the Crusades and the Inquisitions. I continue on through the pogroms in Russia, Ukraine, and elsewhere, showing the startling parallels in both the methods used by violent anti-Semites and in the ideology. An important section of this book, The Road to October 7, shows how entire generations of young Palestinian Arabs have been raised to hate and to kill. The Palestinian educational system, both the one run by the Palestinian Authority and the one run by Hamas, are saturated with anti-Semitism, glorification of violence, and a driving mission of raising young Arabs to hate Jews and to want to engage in terrorism against Israel and the Jewish people. It's the graduates of these schools who filled the ranks of the perpetrators on October 7th. They raised a generation to hate and to kill, and on October 7, 2023, that's what thousands of them did.
And your book's coming out in October, I believe?
Yes, the book is timed for release in conjunction with the second anniversary of the October 7 massacre. The publisher is the Jewish Publication Society of America. It's the oldest Jewish book publisher in America. The website is jps.org, and there's a special discount for placing an advance order now.
Dr. Medoff, here's my co-host, Eb Wilkinson.
Raphael, good to see you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of effort to eradicate anti-Semitism since World War II. You need decades of work to do that. And yet, since October 7th, there's a practically a jihad, a global jihad against Jews and global intifada, and it's roaring around the world. We've noticed a lot of young college females that seem to be at the front of this sometimes violent university anti-Jew protest. What do you make of the aggressive behaviors that we're seeing against Jewish students and also law enforcement?
The phenomenon of college students engaging in anti-Israel and anti-Semitic rallies is shocking, but then again, it's not, because in some ways it's the natural result of young people being educated by college faculty, by professors who themselves are radical. So in other words, American parents send their children to elite institutions such as Harvard, Yale, and the others without ever really being able to scrutinize who the faculty are. The overwhelming majority of professors of Middle East studies, also sadly many in Jewish history, are deeply biased against Israel. And in some cases against the Jewish people. And so what they are teaching college students in the classrooms eventually will come home to roost. Now, to be clear, the vast majority of American college students have not been taking part in these extremist pro-Hamas rallies on college campuses. It's a noisy minority, and they have an impact which is far out of proportion to their actual numbers. Still, it's important and it's worrisome because even a relatively small number of extremists on college campuses can draw a lot of attention, unfortunately, thanks to a sympathetic news media.
With that being said, what do you think the roots of this anti-Jew views amongst the various demographics are in America today and the media? Where did this begin?
I don't know if there's a clear demographic profile to Hamas supporters on American college campuses. Clearly, there is a core group, a minority of the protesters, who are Arab Americans or Muslim Americans. They identify themselves as such, and who are raised in homes where hatred of Israel and often Jews was a staple of their diet. They are the ones who lead the chants, who organize the marches, and often those are the ones who we, of course, see on our television screens. They are followed by a much larger number of kind of what we used to call fellow travelers. So these are college students who tend to be actually naive about the historical events they're yelling about, but who are following along. Sometimes they're following along because it's what the cool kids are doing, that they think. And sometimes, as I say, it's because what they learned in their courses, their college courses about the Arab-Israeli conflict, deeply biased against Israel, portray Israel as a genocidal monster. And so they sincerely believe that they are protesting against injustice when, in fact, sadly, theirs is the cause of injustice, of terrorism, and of extremism in ways that we have really not seen in our lifetime on America's campuses. There was lots of turmoil on our campuses, of course, back in the 1960s, but it was a very different kind of unrest. It was not laced with anti-Semitism, for example, or other kinds of racism. They were protests mostly against the American policy in Southeast Asia. This is a very different type of extremism. Again, it's a small minority of college students, but it's big enough, thanks to the news media's platforms, to have an impact on American public opinion. And clearly, they've had an impact on the Democratic Party. And that perhaps is the most worrying sign of all.
What about outside influencers, people that aren't college students that just come on to cause all this hatred?
And those that are paid to be protesters.
Paid protesters.
Eventually, we may find out the sources of funding for these pro-Hamas protests. Clearly, there is money behind them because they have the latest sound equipment. They have professionally printed banners and posters, which remarkably all have the same slogans, even if they're in different cities and in different sides of the country. When they were setting up tents on campus after campus, they all had the latest model, brand new tents, and they were all identical. So there's likely money behind it. But I wouldn't let our concern about the funding blur the fact that the kids who are yelling these horrible slogans, anti-Israel and anti-Semitic and pro-Hamas slogans, genuinely believe what they are yelling. It's not just that they are being paid. Some of them may very well be. But the really frightening thing is that they actually think that that Israel is some kind of evil monster and that Hamas, the fascists and rapists of Hamas, are somehow a force for liberation. That's the tragedy.
What? How do we resolve this with all the pro-Hamas professors? Is there a way that we can get rid of them?
I don't think so. This is the familiar phenomenon of what have been called tenured radicals. Tenure protects most of the extremist professors. But moreover, most college administrations don't want to get rid of them. The problem for parents is where can you send your sons and daughters where they will not be indoctrinated? So it seems to me American parents are going to have to be very selective in ways they were not before, and will be wise if they consciously avoid places like Columbia and Harvard, which have turned out to be hotbeds of extreme anti-American, anti-Israel, and anti-Semitic sentiment.
So let me jump on Eb's last question. In terms of parents, my parents, your parents, everybody's parents, seemingly, they want their kids to get a great education. They want, if economically viable or scholastically able, they want their children to go to great institutions of higher education, right? In the COVID crisis and in the transgender controversy of the last few years, parents of grade school and high school kids did finally understand, because they were looking at the curriculum, they were looking at the subject matter with their kids studying at home. At what point in time do you think college students' parents are going to be looking more closely at the sort of curriculum, the mood, the tenor on the campuses of where their kids are going to go to school, and try and make some conscious decisions, sending them to schools that have, let's say, a more down the center, a kind of a view of issues like this? Any thoughts?
I think parents are doing that right now.
Yeah.
Of course, this will be a gradual process, but I think many American, many parents of high school seniors have been watching anxiously, seeing campuses erupt with the radical anti-Israel and anti-American sentiments that we've all witnessed, and I think many are having second thoughts about sending their children to the campuses that are the centers of this kind of activity. That may very well become the yardstick in the future for parents looking at colleges to which their children will apply. How many anti-Israel, anti-American rallies were held on that campus in the past year or two? That might be a good way for parents to start deciding whether or not they really want their sons and daughters on those campuses.
Let me move to another area. You just published a new opinion piece on the use of the word Shylock, the slur Shylock. In the piece, you mentioned, let me get my print a little bigger for me to look at. Let's see.
Hafez Barghouti.
Yeah. Hafez Barghouti, he's the editor of the official PA newspaper. He described Israel as the Shylock in the lands of settlement. And Israeli banks as Shylock-style banks that empty our pockets. Shylock is a term that has been a slur against Jews for centuries, and cartoons and graphics of these ugly, beastly kind of looking men who are dealing with banks and banking and so on. How did they get away with this?
Well, Shylock is the infamous Jewish moneylender character in Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice. It's a very ugly depiction of a Jewish man, and it has come over the years to play a role as a kind of a stereotype of Jews. But the word Shylock has also entered common language over the years, sometimes in a way that is no longer connected to its origins, which is to say there are people who have occasionally used the word Shylock, not realizing that it is also offensive to Jews if you're referring to Jews. In the article that you mentioned, I cited an example of the then Vice President Joe Biden casually using the term Shylock, obviously not meaning Jews, but it's just one of those words that he had become accustomed to without understanding its origins. However, the examples from the Palestinian Authority that you just cited, those I think are arguably much more dangerous than some offhand comment by an American politician who was not intending to be anti-Jewish. The examples that the Palestinian Authority media and Palestinian Authority officials use frequently are specifically intended to be anti-Semitic. They cite this the image of Shylock, the greedy moneylender, as what they say is typical of Israel's behaviors. That's a classic example of using old anti-Semitic language in order to say false and ugly things about Israel, the Jewish state today.
I first became aware of your work related to the FDR White House and the Sumner Wells Department of State. What's the health overall at Foggy Bottom these days on Israel and the Jews, do you think?
The State Department does not make its own foreign policy. It carries out the policies of the President of the United States. So during the Holocaust, for example, the State Department played a major role in obstructing the rescue of Jews when opportunities arose, but it did so because the president, Franklin Roosevelt, did not want to rescue Jews. Now, over the decades, the State Department has developed a kind of entrenched, and there are entrenched officials with a mindset that has often been unfriendly to the Jewish people. And certainly during the 1950s, 60s, 70s, there was a strong orientation in the State Department in favor of the Arabs in general and hostile to Israel. But it's up to each individual president whether to continue those attitudes or whether to change them. Certainly under Marco Rubio, our current Secretary of State, the State Department is carrying out the pro-Israel policies of the President, of the Secretary of State. So although the State Department has been a source of anti-Israel hostility traditionally, historically, it is something that can be changed by any president, and certainly it has changed a great deal under the current president.
When I served at the RNC, a friend of mine there was Ed Cox, who was Richard Nixon's son-in-law. And we talked a lot on several different occasions privately about the Yom Kippur War and support that Nixon threw at Israel in order to stop the onslaught from the Arab states. And a lot of people think of Nixon as not particularly warm and fuzzy with Jews. But in some respects, wasn't he a great president for the Jews, given his support at Israel's maximum moment of truth when it came to their survival back in the 1970s?
Well, in the 1973 war, the Yom Kippur War, it should be noted that Nixon's Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, at first pressured the Israelis not to carry out a preemptive strike and engineered withholding weapons from Israel during those first crucial days of the war. Finally, after 10 days, President Nixon overrode Kissinger and authorized that famous airlift of weapons, which was very crucial to Israel eventually winning the Yom Kippur War. So Israelis remember both the dark early days, thanks to Kissinger, but also the important airlift later that was so important to them.
Yep.
Every president has a mixture of motives in deciding policies toward Israel or the Jewish people. And some presidents are, as you note, less warm and fuzzy. Some are more warm and fuzzy. At the end of the day, what really matters is their actual policies, really, not whether or not they seem personally warm or not. And you're certainly right about Richard Nixon. He didn't always, he may not have always seemed that warm and welcoming a person, but Israelis are grateful, of course, for what he did to help them during the Yom Kippur War.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Doctor, what's your view of the likely rise of anti-Semite and democratic socialist Zoran Mamdani? And how do you explain the Jewish Democrats like Chuck Schumer and Nadler bending a knee and coming out in support for his run?
Jewish elected officials in New York were not elected to represent the Jewish community. They happen to be Jewish, but they represent their constituencies. Sometimes someone like Senator Schumer or Congressman Nadler are wrongly portrayed in our news media as if they are Jewish leaders. But they only represent the people they were elected to represent, not the Jewish community. They, Schumer, Nadler, other Jewish politicians in New York, have face a sort of a conflict here with the rise of Zoran Mamdani. And that is a conflict between what is good for them as politicians and their party, and the survival and well-being of Israel and the Jewish people. So it's a bit of a dilemma. Not surprisingly, as politicians often do, some Jewish politicians in New York, as you note, have already endorsed Mamdani, and that's deeply disturbing given Mamdani's extremism, his hatred of Israel, his extremist positions on a variety of issues. So for Schumer or Nadler to praise Mamdani is, for them, it's demonstration that they're loyal to the Democratic Party above all. And that's sad, because we would like our elected officials to be loyal to principles, to be honest and to be decent. And maybe that's too much to expect from politicians. But in the case of Mamdani, it's particularly shocking because Mamdani is so open about his radical positions, his hatred of Israel, and so forth. It's not as if there's a dispute about the different statements he's made supporting Hamas and taking other extremist positions. So he's quite clear about it, and yet those who put their narrow political loyalties above everything else are taking his side. It's shocking, but like many things these days, maybe it's not so shocking. But it's certainly disappointing. And in the American Jewish community, there is a strong sense of disappointment, especially with Senator Schumer, given his prominence as a Senate Minority Leader, and other Jewish elected officials in New York who remarkably are lining up alongside such an extreme hater of Israel as Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah, it's like sheep voting for the wolf.
Right.
And, it's interesting because he's not the first politician who is open about his hatred towards Israel. You've got the Squad. You've got so many politicians out there that are basically front and center with their absolute hatred of Israel and of Jews. Who do you think's been the best U.S. president for the Jewish people and for Israel?
As a historian, I prefer to take the long view, and I can look back at the policies of President Truman and his successors, but I think it's too early to judge more recent presidents. So I hesitate to put a label as best or worst. I would say that every president faces different circumstances. Some have been harsher towards Israel. Some have been friendlier towards Israel. There are no guarantees in this world regarding America-Israel relations, but there are bedrock common principles which have withstood the test of time. So whether the president has been a Democrat or a Republican, and whether the president has been openly more friendly to Israel or less friendly to Israel, still there are so many shared values and interests between the Israeli people and the American people that the friendship between our two countries, I think, will endure regardless of any specific one president.
Dr. Rafael Medoff. He's with the Stephen S. Wyman Institute for Holocaust Studies. His new book, The Road to October 7th, Hamas, the Holocaust, and the Eternal War Against the Jews, will be out in October. Thanks for joining us today on Inside Track. Really appreciate you taking the time out. I hope we can
This has been great.
ask you to come back again in the future. You're a great guest. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. I look forward.
Yeah, we got to run and hear from some of our great supporters so we can pay the man. We'll be right back. No channel flipping.
You're listening to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now a word from our sponsor.
It's termite season.
Hi, it's me.
And bugs feed trucks from Essential Pest Control. Go blue at Essential Pest Control. We'll eliminate those bugs, bees, and termites. And stop paying too much to that national provider. Buy local for great service and affordable rates. Call Essential Pest Control because termites fear the blue.
Run for your life.
Call for the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. 886-3029. That's 886-3029. Or check online at essentialpest.com.
This is Eb Wilkinson with Wilkinson Wealth Management, where we manage money for gun owners. What does it mean to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired? It means designing a plan that allows you to do the things you want to do, outpace inflation, and never run out of money in your lifetime. If you want to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired, call me, Eb Wilkinson, at 777-1911. That's 777-1911 or WilkinsonWealthMGMT.com.
I'm proud to welcome my good friends at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail to Inside Track as an advertiser. Jamie Kipper and her staff are conservation experts. They sell round and square steel tubing, metal plate and roofing materials, as well as new and used steel, aluminum, and stainless steel to ranchers, artists, interior designers, roofers, as well as you do-it-yourselfers out there. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail is open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to noon. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, 701 East 36th Street. Call 520-209-1576. That's 520-209-1576, or go to TucsonIronRetail.com. Come by and be sure to ask for Jamie. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail. This is what conservation and repurposing is all about.
Welcome back to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now back to our show.
Welcome back to Inside Track. This portion of the show brought to you by Wilkinson Wealth Management. Eb helps gun owners with their retirement accounts. He does a great job for my family, and he'll do the same for you. Call him today at 777-1911. Inside Track also brought to you by our family 60-year-old commercial real estate company, Paul Ash Commercial Management, and our friend Eric Rudin's great company, Essential Pest Control.
Wonderful company.
Our company relies upon the services that he provides. He's got a great team. Call for the Essential Pros at 886-3029 today to protect your home or business. And finally, if you need steel products for your home, business, ranch, or farm, call Jamie Kipper at Tucson Iron and Metal Surplus. My home's corrugated steel fences and storage area are filled with their steel. Call at 209-1576 or go out to the yard at 701 East 36th Street. My broadcast partner, as you know, is a wealth manager. We talk about that. He does very well for his clients, including me and my sister, as I also talked about. While some wealth managers and investors panicked earlier this year, Eb, when the markets were in turmoil, there were some who did panic, but not Eb's company. You didn't panic. Eb sent me a message the other day, and I'd like him to share some of his thoughts related to that message he sent out to myself and other clients of his. Talk about that, Eb.
Sure. One thing that people love to do is panic when the market drops down.
Sheep.
And get greedy when the market is making new highs. And that never does well. When you look at if you looked at the equity market on the first trading day of this year, and not again until the end of June, you can, and I put down, you can be forgiven for concluding that not much, if anything, had happened, when in fact a great deal happened.
In terms of increase in value.
In terms of increase in value. If you just looked at those two numbers,
right,
it's like, yeah, not great.
Like 2.6 or 2.7%.
Not terrible, but not great. Well, the S&P 500 index made an all-time high February 19th, and by April 8th, it had closed 18.9% lower.
Right.
I had a call from a guy who was panicking, and I said, you do realize, and we've talked about this, average annual peak to trough movement in the market is 15%. We're just a little above average right now. This is a non-event.
Right.
If anything, you should be panicking about putting money into the market before it goes up, because
trying to get more money in.
Correct. Sell a car, do something, but put more money in, because that didn't begin to express the degree of sheer panic, there's no other word for it, that enveloped the markets upon President Trump's announcement on April 2nd of a dramatic increase in tariff protocol. So the panic ended just as abruptly when he came out and announced a 90-day postponement of most of the new tariffs. And in the 7 weeks following that announcement, the markets returned basically to an all-time high. And as it has virtually always been, the optimum course for investors is to stay the course and not do anything. What we tout is, this is all worked out. We've planned for this. We've planned for the markets.
If you're in good companies, making good profits and with good strategic goals, why jump ship?
So for example, you can't tell me that on April 9th that the Apple was going to sell 19% less cell phones or computers, or Exxon was going to pump 19% less gas, or that General Mills was going to make 19% less Cheerios. It's not happening. The price may have changed, but the value, well, it did change. It got more valuable as the price went down. So the people out there who panic are panicking for the wrong reasons. They're following.
The stock got more valuable, meaning you could pick it up at a better price.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what you're saying about getting into the market if you have the resources.
Absolutely.
To do so.
I mean, if you're getting a 10% return at a current level, and now the price drops by 20%, you're getting an even greater rate of return at that level. Why would you not do that?
Right.
And so, bottom line, as long as we're continuously working on your plan and making sure that your plan has not changed, what happens day to day, minute to minute, month to month, year to year in the market doesn't matter, because we're not invested in the market. We're invested in the great companies of America and the world, the most well-financed, the most nimble, the most strategic companies out there that will always find a way to make money.
Well, as we talked about before, the way to reach you is
777-1911.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way,
yeah,
just to let you know out there, our office is a gun-free zone. If you don't have a gun when you get there, we'll loan you one free until you leave.
They take care of gun owners. Eb and everybody listening and watching, say a prayer for the families who lost loved ones this past weekend in a horrific flash flood event in Kerrville, Texas. Don't believe the leftist lies about Noah. Here's the truth. In 1987, there was a similar event that took place right in that same area with the same river. They had talked about installing sirens, and they didn't. And it was the city council and the county there who decided on that. They had the opportunity to do it. They didn't do it. I'm not trying to blame anybody and put guilt on those people, but this could have been avoided, and it's not the overreaction that you hear from some people on the left trying to pin every disaster that might occur on the president of the United States. And by the way, if you're looking to support the families, both looking for their loved ones as well as housing people, the Cajun Nation Navy is raising money right now. We've seen in multiple disasters where they have come in with boots on the ground, men and women who are practically professionals at this.
Boots on the ground and boats in the water.
Yeah, that's true. And they do a great job. The Cajun National Navy. So we were talking before, Eb, about, we're doing some news clips here before we leave the air today. We're talking before about ICE and the stuff that's going on around the country. A city council member in the Los Angeles area and another in Texas suggest protesters should kill ICE officers while they take dangerous illegal criminals into custody.
How are they not arrested? How are they? This is a threat.
But this has been an ongoing issue. Whether it was the riots during George Floyd's summer, there's not the kind of penalty. Now there is, though. Talking about protest, a 66-year-old. I gave Chris this story earlier. A 66-year-old Oro Valley granny, Dana Whitson. She's been charged by state and federal officials in Los Angeles for her violent actions on a recent riot in Los Angeles. Other leftists, and they ought to be found and punished as well, suggest that protesters take a bullet from ICE or from other officials to stand up to the man. Can you imagine anybody with
insane.
A perverse kind of sort of psychological whatever to suggest that people do that? That's crazy.
Bruce, if conservatives came out and said the same thing, that the left would be demanding they be jailed, hung,
right, hung on the
quartered, heads put on a pike. And yet here they are literally getting away with this stuff. What about the ICE agents arrest 11 illegal alien sex offenders in Minnesota?
So most of them not from south of the border, most of them from Southeast Asia. And this was a huge sex ring of these sex offenders
Minneapolis.
that they arrested in Minneapolis. Just an unbelievable story. So, I mean, what the F is up with the left? You really have to wonder the kind of perverse sort of thinking that goes on in that party today.
They are deliberately trying to destroy this country. They're pissed that Trump got reelected. They're pissed that he's actually doing what he said he was going to do. And I think that's what pisses him off the most.
Right.
Is he's doing what he said he was going to do. He's accomplishing great things.
Hey, he made promises. He's keeping those promises.
Take a look at the border. They're shutting it down like nobody's business.
Right.
The number of people that are crossing over are a fraction of what they were. And, oh, by the way, none are being released into the United States.
Exactly. The Johnson rule. This may not be something that's common knowledge. I've been aware of the Johnson rule for many, many years. This from our friend Chad Conley, who's been on Inside Track several times. In a recent court filing, the IRS made a stunning and long overdue admission. Pastors, rabbis, priests who endorse political candidates from the pulpit should not risk losing their tax-exempt status. Chad says, let that sink in. For the first time in a long time, a government agency is saying out loud what many of us conservatives, and frankly the left as well, have said and believed for a long time, that our freedom of religion and freedom of speech does not vanish when we step into a religious sanctuary, whatever religion you are affiliated with. This is more than just a legal technicality. It is a turning point, Chad says. This moment marks a significant victory for believers who have long felt muzzled. I remember in 2008, I was working for the McCain campaign in Carlsbad, New Mexico. I was chased off the property. So there were churches there who would have services like Wednesday nights, Thursday nights,
sure.
Okay, as well as on the weekend, right? And we weren't talking to the priests or the pastors inside telling them what they should say. All we were doing was putting leaflets on cars, chased off the premises in church after church after church. even if they might have supported John McCain, okay, but they were afraid of losing their tax-exempt status.
And yet, historically, the black churches have had no problem with doing that,
and they
have never faced retribution. And I'm not picking on them. I'm just stating.
No, but it's a state of fact. It's a state of fact.
I'm just stating a fact.
Right.
And so now it's come around where, guess what? We get to do it now. Oh, and here's what's going to be interesting. Because it's a 501c3 and they're worried about losing the status, and it's a church, and in the ruling, it was basically along the lines of, if you're talking to your congregants, you should not lose that. What about some of the other 501c3s? Oh, like maybe the NRA Foundation.
Right.
If they're talking to their donors,
right,
do they get the same exemption that the churches get?
Well, it's a great point. It's a great point, because you've got a C3, a C4, and there's a differentiation as to who can make political endorsements and contribute to PACs and so on, and candidates. So you're saying, might the Johnson rule change for the clergy, also go into other areas as well?
What I am saying is, I would not be surprised to find out that there's going to be legal challenges here shortly.
Oh, for the foundations, not just NRA, but other foundations.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you have a little bit of contact there. The Supreme Court greenlights Trump administration's cuts to federal workforce. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor broke from her usual alliance with the know-nothing Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson by siding with the Trump administration to lift a judge's order that paused the order to carry out mass layoffs across the federal bureaucracy. This 8-1 unsigned order, it's important, this was not a ruling from the bench, but it was an unsigned order from the High Court, allows federal agencies to resume implementing President Donald Trump's February executive order instructing departments to prepare for reductions in force.
So let me ask you a question. You know more about this than I do. What does it mean that it's an unsigned order, and why should people care?
I think people should care, because if this matter came to the court, I think what they're doing in a non procedural sort of a way is letting people know you're not going to win if you come in with that case on the other side of this issue.
So they're just giving
and that could change if the court changed.
But they're giving them a strong heads up. Yeah, you're not going to win.
Right, and that keeps some of them away. It didn't keep the Obama district judge who ignored the Chief Justice's order on national orders on Trump policies. The decision by Judge Indira Talwani of the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts, an Obama appointee, came shortly after Planned Parenthood Federation of America and its chapters in Massachusetts and Utah sued over the provision which establishes a 1-year Medicaid funding ban.
Wow.
So again, this judge, an Obama appointee in a very, very leftist
liberal
state, okay,
or leftist,
and she is now, that thing's going to get turned over if it hasn't been already, and this whole thing with Supreme Court Justice John Roberts coming out and saying, you cannot do these nationwide, implementations of shutdowns if you're a district judge.
And yet
she did it, and this woman did it a week later.
Yeah, and yet Ketanji Brown Jackson says the conservative majority's recent ruling poses an existential threat to the rule of law. This is a gal that doesn't know the difference
between a man and a woman.
Can't define a woman.
Right. Well, she's not exactly. And you remember we had. I'm struggling for his name right this second, but we had a leading spokesman for the left on the show probably 2 years ago.
Yeah,
when she was being confirmed, saying how bright she was and she'd be a shining light. Even Sotomayor disagrees with her on several different decisions. And Amy Coney Barrett, who has not exactly been a darling for the right, ripped her a new one recently in one of the court decisions.
I saw that, but I think it's more important and more telling that Justice Sotomayor did that.
That's right. Oh, there's no question about that.
Yeah, she's looking at it and go, oh my God, how did you get in here?
Right. Yeah, well, she detracts from the right or left side that they all represent. Epstein.
Oh my God.
So everybody is in a tizzy about Pam Bondi saying, well, there's not a case there, and the names aren't there, and all these conspiracy theories about what's up, who's on the list. Well, we already knew who's on the list because we've seen the plane logs.
Right.
Okay? We know who came there. Okay, and
they're on the list.
They all came there on the same plane. Okay, and
sometimes multiple times.
And Jake Tapper, this is the guy that ignored a mentally deficient president who has changed the narrative and changed the story on all kinds of issues over the years. This is the guy who is now, because he's looking for anything he can possibly do, he's the one that is out there with more conspiracy theories on the Epstein case. Okay. Before we go, I got this letter by an email. This is related to the big aesthetic and pretty bill. Dear friend of PBS, thanks to you and so many other Americans, Congress has received millions of emails and calls for support of PBS. We have been touched by the messages that have been sent, with so many people sharing why PBS is such an important part of their life. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, our funding is more endangered now than ever before. In June, the House voted to zero out funding for PBS, and now the Senate, which they did, is considering the same cuts. If our funding is eliminated, it endangers so many crucial services. You know what? I have no idea why the government, after 60 plus years, is still supporting PBS. They have contributors all over the country, and that's their right to do. We've given money in the past to KUAT for different programming that we like, but government funding should be out of PBS and the Corporation for
Public Broadcasting. And they're worried about cutting funding to Sesame Street. Sesame Street makes billions on its own.
And a lot of those shows make a ton of money.
They don't need to be funding that.
Right, exactly right. All right, well.
You know what they do need to be funding? Voice of America overseas.
Okay, I agree with that. Just real quick, I promise this is the last news break. What do Gavin Newsom and Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego have in common? They're both campaigning for president, with Ruben Gallego making a campaign stop in Iowa,
wow,
and Gavin Newsom in South Carolina. Eb, take us out.
Okay, hey, thanks to all of you for listening in. All of our views and our views on the news are on Facebook, X. Check us out. We're also available on Live the Dream Media and Facebook. Thanks for joining us today. Until next Wednesday when we return, this is Eb Wilkinson.
And Bruce Ash.
Wishing you a very good rest of your morning. Be sure to join us again in 167 hours.
That's a wrap.
It's termite season.
Hi, it's me.
And bugs fear the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. Go blue at Essential Pest Control. We'll eliminate those bugs, bees, and termites. And stop paying too much to that national provider. Buy local for great service and affordable rates. Call Essential Pest Control because termites fear the blue.
Run for your life.
Call for the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. 886-3029. That's 886-3029. Or check online at essentialpest.com.
This is Eb Wilkinson with Wilkinson Wealth Management, where we manage money for gun owners. What does it mean to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired? It means designing a plan that allows you to do the things you want to do, outpace inflation, and never run out of money in your lifetime. If you want to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired, call me, Eb Wilkinson, at 777-1911. That's 777-1911 or WilkinsonWealthMGMT.com.
I'm proud to welcome my good friends at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail to Inside Track as an advertiser. Jamie Kipper and her staff are conservation experts. They sell round and square steel tubing, metal plate and roofing materials, as well as new and used steel, aluminum, and stainless steel to ranchers, artists, interior designers, roofers, as well as you do-it-yourselfers out there. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail is open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to noon. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, 701 East 36th Street. Call 520-209-1576. That's 520-209-1576, or go to TucsonIronRetail.com. Come by and be sure to ask for Jamie. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail. This is what conservation and repurposing is all about.